Hello, everyone. Welcome to the day two of the MBA Spotlight. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. My name is JJ, and I am your host. So it's also my pleasure to introduce to you amazing individuals, current students who have taken out their time to come speak to us, to come share their insights with everybody. I have Raina Williams from the Kellogg School of Management. I also have Akshit Kara from Wharton Business School. I have DBM Tiwari from Michigan Ross School of Business, and of course, Bavia from Yale School of Management. So we'll begin with an overview of student life in general, go through some questions, and if you check to the right of your screen, there are different icons. You see a Q&A option. Feel free to drop your questions there and feel free to upvote your favorite questions because the questions with the highest number of upvotes will be answered first. So yeah, so I like our guests to introduce themselves. Maybe tell us about who you are and what you currently do at your different schools and what you're looking to do after your MBA. So I'll start with Raina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Raina Williams. I'm so excited to be here to meet you all and to share a little bit about Kellogg. I'm a first year in our 2-year program here at Kellogg. We have a couple of different MBA programs, but I'm in our 2Y program. Prior to Kellogg, I worked at American Express in New York City as a part of our new product strategy division. And post Kellogg, I hope to go into brand management in the sports and wellness space. I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of things today, but at Kellogg, I am a member of our Kellogg Student Association. I'm a director in academics there. I'm also a director of prospective students for our BMA, our Black Management Association. I'm also a member of our Sports and Wellness Business Club. And then lastly, I am one of our board fellows for our nonprofit board program. I'll pass it to Akshit.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Akshit. I'm currently a first year student here at Wharton. Prior to Wharton, I worked at Goldman Sachs as a quant strategist on their fixed income trading desk. I primarily focused on designing end to end systems for their trading desk, focusing on efficiency and scalability. I'm a computer science engineer by craft, and I've always been passionate about using technology to solve real world problems. Over my experience at Goldman, I've grown more and more. Sorry?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying over my experience at Goldman, I've grown more and more passionate about entrepreneurship, which ultimately led me to pursue an MBA. So yeah, I'm at Wharton trying to gain the skills, network necessary to eventually launch my own venture. Outside of academics, I enjoy playing guitar. I'm also a good chess player. More recently, after coming to Philly, I've started playing squash a lot with my classmates here. I'm part of the technology club, I'm part of the entrepreneurship club, and I'm also a board fellow for Squash. Yeah, very excited to be here today with everyone.
Uh, Hi everyone, excited to be here along with the esteemed panel. My name is Divyan Tiwari. I come from Mumbai, India. Prior to Michigan Ross, I was working with Hindustan Petroleum, HPCL is a leading oil marketing company back in India. I worked in the verticals of sales, marketing, and retail analytics. Prior to B School, I intend to pivot into consulting. At Ross, I'm assistant vice president of the consulting club and a director at the energy club. Outside work, I find joy in playing cricket. I write poems. I sing songs sometimes. I love cooking. People have vouched I cook good. I chose to believe them. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Hi, everyone. Pavia Chauhan, really excited to be here and here with my peers as well from all of these great schools. I'm a first year at Yale SOM. Prior to SOM, I was in specialized healthcare consulting at IQVIA and was really motivated to start my own digital health venture. So at Yale SOM, I'm here to explore my entrepreneurial aspirations and part of the Startup and Entrepreneurship Club here at Yale, also part of the consulting club just to impart some consulting tips and tricks from my past life as a consultant. And outside of school, love singing, creative writing, cooking, akin to Divyam at SOM. I've picked up a newfound passion for pickleball. So exploring that as well. Very excited to speak with y'all.
Great, great. Thanks a lot for the introduction. So let's dive deep into the questions. So the first is the big elephant in the room, stuff around costs, hidden costs, budgeting, cost of living. I mean, how exactly did you plan for all of that? And the reason why we're asking is because a lot of individuals are looking to, get loans from not just the school, but also from some third parties. But we've also heard that on getting to school, people hear a lot, or people get to find out that there are other associated costs that they didn't prepare for. So, what are some of those hidden costs? And then, what are some of the budgeting tips that you have? So, I'll start with Reina.
Yep, school is expensive. I think that was like the scariest part about this whole thing was for me quitting my job to like do this full time so that I could like really pour into the full year MBA experience. So I think this is a really great question to start with. For me, I had an idea that I was going to go to school, I think about 2 years before I applied. So I was saving towards it. Mind you, I also lived in New York, so I was spending it all with my friends every single weekend. So I didn't have the biggest savings, even though I tried. But what was really important here at Kellogg was applying for financial aid and being just very honest about where I was financially. And Kellogg was very, very understanding about that. And then from there, figuring out, okay, so what can I get from like a financial aid perspective, from a loans perspective, and then as well as like the opportunities that we have for scholarships on campus that are based on like particular things or events. So for Kellogg, for example, we're very inclusive and we try not to have money be a barrier to experience. So certain things like studying abroad or doing even like portions of classes abroad or outside of Chicago, we have like stipends that we give to students that all you have to do is apply to. So being just like very keen to like those types of programs have helped me be able to have the full experience while being very smart financially.
Chit?
Hey, yes, can you hear me?
Sure.
Yeah, I think my experience was somewhat similar as well. I had a pretty good idea a few years back that I wanted to do an MBA. So I started saving up for it. I think the main thing for me was just trying to get an estimate for like how much is it exactly going to cost me. And if you go to the school's website, they would give a number for the 2-year MBA. The key thing I would highlight there is take that as a pinch of salt, take that with a starting point. So I think for Wharton, it mentioned something around 250 to 260K, which is a good starting point to have, but that can vary a lot based on how you spend your 2 years. Specifically, I think the part that might vary is firstly your living expense. Uh, Based on where you live, your rent could be, let's say in Philly, like $1,300 to $2,300, and you compound that over 2 years, it's essentially a 20K difference. And the second the biggest difference is like travel. You will find people who will essentially do like one trip every weekend to people who would not do any trip at all. So that difference over 2 years can also amount to like 50 to 60K. So I would keep that in mind that the 250 to 60K expense that most of the schools mention is a good starting point, but practically it's probably going to cost a bit more. I think at Wharton, it's the number average most people expect is like 270 to 280K. Whereas if you are doing like 5 international trips and each one costs like 4 to 5K, that's additional 10 to 20K expense. So I would think about all of those details when you're thinking about budgeting as well, and keep that in mind because a lot of times people come up with 250 to 60K as the first estimate, and then they take loans based on that, and then at the end the money runs out, and then they're thinking about what else, how do I figure out the rest of the financing because they still have like 3 months to go. So I would advise to keep that in the back of your head when you are actually thinking about budgeting. The other I think important thing to mention is like specifically for internationals, because we don't have a SSN, or most of us won't have an SSN, we won't really get a credit history and most banks would not give us credit cards because we don't have an SSN. So I would, like, as soon as you enter US, the first thing I would suggest is find banks that give you a credit card without SSN and start building a credit history, because once you get those credit cards and once you have pretty good credit history, you will start getting a lot of discounts on the future purchases that you will do. So I think that's my two main innovations.
And sorry, not to plug my previous employer, but I'm pretty sure American Express is one of the companies that does allow you to apply for credit cards without an SSN. So like a lot of people are very deep in the Amex bag. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Great, thank you. Vivian.
Yeah, I agree with Akshat, but at the same time, I would also like to emphasize that the dollar value, which is mentioned in most of the school websites, is pretty much a ballpark figure. If you plan your budget meagerly, means it all depends on the individual. It all drills down that how one lives. It is really possible to do your MBA with the figure that is mentioned there. Uh, but yeah, if you choose to make global trips, if you choose to hang out a bit more than everybody else, if you choose to have a party kind of life, then yeah, that comes on its own expenses. But as far as the applying for loans are concerned, I have applied to, I'm on a loan myself. I've received a scholarship. So it's pretty much doable. And if you really look at it, it doesn't come that much a shocker, and you can have a ballpark figure in mind with a room for adjustment depending on your own lifestyle.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Bhavya, would you like to chip in? Looks like she's currently not here. Anyway, great. So let's move on to the next one. I think anybody can start first. It would be around what were some of the surprises? What were some of the things that gave you that wow effect when you got there? So, and this is particular to both the academic rigors as well as maybe the social life. What parts took you by surprise when you got to school?
Yeah, so I can go first. Yeah. So the most surprising part for me was the recruiting season starts as soon as you enter the school, and you feel that you want to breathe after getting in, after all that hard work that you've put in to be there, and you realize the moment you step in, you're on some other journey which is even more rigorous and even more demanding than your previous one. That was a shocker to me, but yeah, it is a roller coaster ride which you enjoy truly. I would say come prepared for uh, being busy 24 hours. At the same time, being busy for the things that you love doing. Uh, the recruiting in the US looks very different from the recruiting back in India. Networking is a very big part of recruiting here, to which most of the internationals are not really aware of or not really well versed of. That is additional skill that we are supposed to develop, which is doable again. But then, yeah, need to be mindful of the US culture, US lifestyle, and US style of recruiting, I would say. Uh, but yeah, it's a journey you would not regret. If you ask me today at this moment, I would want to do MBA for rest of my life, because it's very entertaining, very enriching, and very enthralling at the same time.
Great.
Yeah, I can just add on to that. Like Divya mentioned, recruiting starts first day. I would even argue it starts even before you come here. There's plenty of pre-MBA programs that you can apply to as soon as you have an admit, specifically in consulting or investment banking or even sometimes investment management roles. So be prepared for that. I think as soon as you enter into you got an admit, there are things you can do to maximize your chances. I was just speaking to a friend of mine here who got an intern offer from a pre-MBA program that she applied to. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I think the other unexpected benefit for me majorly was the MBA in general increased my access to a lot of things I wasn't even aware of. So for example, like I mentioned, I'm a computer science engineer. I have finance background. I've never taken a marketing course in my life. Probably would have never taken if it wasn't part of the core curriculum. But once I did take it, I found it to be pretty cool. Just the way thinking about brand management and how to market yourself, I think I found the class pretty interesting. And just as based on that, I'm actually exploring product marketing management roles. So that's one of the unexpected benefits for me.
I feel like I agree with both from like a courses perspective. I've just been so blown away, especially with some of the courses that were in our like pre-term. I know that Wharton, Ross, Kellogg, we all have like a pre-term that usually like has some sort of leadership component as well as like maybe like a stats or something course, maybe not as fun, but like the leadership classes are really just incredible. And I think that moment where you're on campus before the second years are on campus to really get together, I think there's just like nothing like it. I also agree with Divyam, like the recruiting thing starts, and to Akshit's point before, like it starts before you get on campus. So that is something to be aware of. But I'd say the most pleasant surprise specifically about Kellogg has been like the way we start our year for our first year. So we start on a trip called Quest. So we literally, before we had our like orientation, we started on like 20 different trips around the world. So I was in Thailand, and you go with strangers and you're like not allowed to talk about like where you're from and like all of like these like what you used to do, and you're really just supposed to meet people based on who they are. And it was like the most incredible experience ever. I know like Ross, you guys start off on a trip. I think Wharton, you guys travel anyway, so I don't know
Yeah,
if it
it's
starts on a
called
trip and it's
it's
summer.
called Amtrak.
Yes,
In
yeah, I
Ross,
know
it's called
Ross is.
Amtrak. Yeah.
So I think that like any moment that you get to like actually meet people that have very, very different walks of life and travel with them, it's so incredible, and it's so different than anything I've ever done before.
Great, great. So I think we can just quickly head over to question and answer because I mean, 45 minutes is really not it's not a lot of time. So try and crunch it. So I'll start showing some questions on stage. By the way, for participants who are currently joining us, please feel free to upvote your favorite questions because the questions with the most or with the highest upvotes will get answered first for the interest of time. So we'll start with Rabin. Rabin has a question around, he says, is it true that a graduate MBA or graduates, MBA graduates will secure their jobs at top-notch companies within 2 to 3 months of graduation? I know you guys are not at com, but feel free to share any any insights on this.
You know, that's a hard question, and I'll be very honest. For the three schools that we represent, the answer is yes. Everything else I can't speak to, but if you go somewhere like Wharton, Michigan, or Kellogg, I'd say that you definitely will have a job offer within 2 to 3 months of graduation. Would you guys agree?
Um, yeah, means I agree to it, but you need to work for it. Means it's not like
Yeah.
offered in a platter for you, but you need to work for it. It's doable. It's very much doable.
Yeah, I think
Great.
overall I agree as well. I think the key thing you should be aware of here is in general right now, job market is hard. There's just no other way of putting it. Like Divyam said, you have to work for it, and especially harder for internationals because there are not a lot of companies that will sponsor H1B for you. So keep that in mind. Most of the times, people do get a good job within 2 to 3 months, but yeah, the process might not be as simple as it was, let's say, 4 years back, where essentially like everyone can pivot into essentially any job. That might not be the case anymore, and that's true even for top business schools.
Great. Okay, so I guess this question might be more suited for DVM and Akshit. So it's around how hard is it to get a working visa or a work visa in the US after graduation? And this is particularly with regards to individuals who do not get good scholarships and those who are taking huge loans. Also, is it considered a risk if you have this huge loan when applying for your visa?
Yeah, I think this it's a very good question, and it's very important one to know before you come here. Practically, there are enough job opportunities after MBA, and you have enough employers that do sponsor H1B visa. But at the end of the day, H1B visa is a lottery. So even though you have good chances of getting into it, your STEM extension only allows you to work without H-1B for 3 years. And even though you have a good chances of getting it in 3 years, there's always a risk that you won't. Specifically for loans, I think most people are able to pay off their loans in the 3 years pretty easily, or they can refinance it at a much cheaper rates usually. So I don't think loans are necessarily the problem from that perspective. The other thing a lot of people end up doing is if you're working, let's say, at a big tech company, like for example, Microsoft, and you don't get selected in H-1B lottery, they can shift you to Canada office or something where you can keep applying for it and you can come back to US after a few years. The other option recently a lot of people have started exploring is entrepreneurship visa. It's US changed a bunch of immigration rules around that in the last year or so. So that one has been much more accessible. It's more skill based, it's more experience based, but not a lot of people can apply for it. But if you satisfy those criteria, that also is an option that a lot of people recently have started considering. So that's my 2 cents on it. Divyam, please add or correct me if you feel something is wrong.
Yeah, I agree with Akshat completely. So there are a handful of companies who offer a sponsorship to H-1B visa for the internationals, but all those companies, they are pretty big names. Even if you happen to work for any of such big firms like MBBs in consulting or some big investment banking firm, they can actually transfer you to some international location and call you back on L1 visa or something. So yes, you do have a lot of options to work around. Once you get into a good B school and once you land up a good job offer, I would not worry that much about it, but that would be a concern for me, yes.
Great. So I think next question, I think Reina can take this. It says, how much is the weekly burn rate for you apart from tuition? Also, if you don't partake in these trips, do you feel disadvantaged or it's just a choice?
So I think somebody mentioned before, it does depend on like how you want to live. So for example, in Evanston, you can have an apartment that you pay like literally 700 a month for, but you could also have an apartment that you pay like 2,500 a month for. And so like I think that just depends on like I have friends that are living in houses and they're doing more of like the 700 a month versus in high-rise apartments 2,500. I'm in the middle at like a 1,200 kind of spot. So whoever wants to do the math of that. I'd say like when it comes to the actual like day-to-day things, one thing that you will see at pretty much every business school is almost every single day you'll have free lunch because there's always a company presentation and there's always like some way to have lunch already there. So when I'm at school at the hub, I usually don't have to bring food. So like that's been really, really nice. I think that the biggest thing to the person who ever asked this question is the trips. And so fortunately for the fall, because Kellogg starts so late, we're on the quarter system. We actually are like so down, heads down in recruiting that like traveling doesn't really start until like Thanksgiving-ish, in the winter holidays. So we're now just starting to kind of see the checks of traveling. But I will say it's not everything for the experience. We have a lot of people that stay in Evanston, and we like figure out really fun stuff to do in case you don't want to hop on a plane. But again, to reiterate, if you do want to hop on a plane and do a trek or do one of our courses that has an immersion globally as a part of like the program, there are scholarship opportunities that Kellogg like will really all you have to do is ask for the money and they will subsidize it heavily. So you can get to the best of both worlds.
Great. Welcome back, Bavia.
Yeah,
I think I'll just, I think I'll just,
this
sure,
afternoon.
sure. I'll just throw you up on stage now because we're already at Q&A. So I guess you can take a go at this question. It says, for international students in particular, what's the job market looking like for the top programs?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to provide my insight, though I think the others may be better positioned to answer this particular question from an international student perspective. But I think currently International students, I think from an internship perspective, most people are recruiting currently for summer associate positions. That generally has been stable across the board. So I think no particular discrepancy between someone who's an international versus someone who is a current U.S. resident or citizen. That being said, the full-time market, as we all know, it's common knowledge, has been a bit stagnant over the past few years, but is expected to pick up. I can speak to consulting generally. Consulting has definitely been picking up, as is investment banking. But I think for international students, there's an additional layer added in terms of the visa restrictions, which I think Akshit or Divyam, you may be able to better speak to.
Yeah, I can add on to that. So I think it's pretty much essentially agreeing with what Bhavya said. The only nuance I would add is because there's not every company will give you a sponsorship when you're working there. International usually tend to prefer to apply to roles which later has at least the potential to give you a full-time offer. So that sort of naturally narrows down your target pool by some extent. In case you don't get any of them, fine, people still do end up working at internships at companies which do not offer sponsorship, and then they try to recruit later for full time. But there's always that mindset that there's that affinity for firms who actually do sponsor you. So yeah, that's the only thing I would add.
I think I agree with both of them, that market is, as we hear, is opening up. It is not as bad as it was last year. Uh, but we are hearing it. Our struggle is still going on, and unless I believe that we all of us are in the process of securing our summer internships. But as rightly mentioned by Akshit, as the options for international further narrows down because there are only handful of companies which sponsors. So it's a tricky business, but again, I would say situation is getting better.
I'd also add what's interesting for the companies that do sponsor, typically they're like very heavily in the investment banking and the consulting space. And
Yeah.
once you're in business school, you'll quickly understand that like investment banking is kind of first and then consulting is like very, very shortly after. But they're kind of right now, everybody's coffee chatting and, you know, recruiting
Yeah.
heavily right now. But what's kind of interesting or cool about it is at least by like February, you would know where you stand. Whereas like a lot, instead of like doing like more of like a spring or later recruiting, like those are the ones that are first. And then I know a lot of international students that like maybe don't want to do those two and are like willing to chance it on like a smaller firm. They're like working closely with like the career management center because they don't want the McKinsey or the Bain or the Goldman. So it's like you kind of get to do both if you wanted to. Like I know people that are heavily doing IB and consulting, which sounds nuts, but because they will both be done very soon, like answers come sooner, which is good.
And just one
Great.
final piece here, just to end on a note of optimism. I think some people pursuing traditional paths as well, people who are recruiting for, say, startups. There's some tech firms that do end up recruiting in the spring. Those pathways are still open to you, should you not have clarity by the spring as well. And your school will help you. I mean, if you're, you know, you're in this environment where the school is positioned to make sure that you are set up for success. So fret not, you will get an internship and you will have something set up for the future.
So I think, Bavia, you can start with this. The question says, how do you divide your time among taking classes, recruiting, attending club activities, and any other thing? And is it different for first year students compared to second year students?
Yeah. So Yale particularly is set up as a quarter system. So we are currently in the second quarter of the fall semester. I would say about on average, we spend 3 to 4 hours in class per day. That could vary depending on your class schedule, but I think that's the average daily amount that we'd spend in classes. The remainder of that time, specifically for this fall semester, has been taken up largely by recruitment because there's so many coffee chats that you have to kind of participate in. There are employer events, a lot of folks coming on campus. And then I would say, like, about 2 to 5 or 3 to 5 hours a week. I personally dedicate to my extracurricular pursuits when it comes to like organizing Diwali for the school or partaking in my entrepreneurship ventures. So extracurriculars are a little deprioritized this first semester, particularly for first years. But in speaking with the second years, we see that that time opens up tremendously because recruitment, which is taking up the bulk of our time in this first semester, is over. And so a lot more space, bandwidth to do other things, explore your university, socialize. Not that we haven't been socializing this first semester, let me caveat that.
So one thing that MBA teaches you at the very first is how to prioritize yourself and how to uh, take times for the things that matters to you, because there are 100 things going around and you only have 24 hours with you. So of course, recruiting does take a lot of time, followed by taking classes, followed by social activities. That order may be different for somebody else. Uh, so yeah, it depends where you want to spend your time and energy. Uh, there are a lot of social events which are going on, and you cannot be part of everything. You have to be mindful of that. Again, means uh, you have to be decisive for your own well-being. The second part of the question, does it look same for second year students? It all depends. Everybody's journey is entirely different. It may happen for a second year student that they may have not landed up their dream jobs, so they are still in that cycle, which is also okay. As I said, everybody's journey is different. But yeah, if you're able to secure your dream job, summer internship in the company where you're looking for, and you also got the return offer, situation may look different to you in the second year, and your time may be a bit eased up than everybody else. Yeah.
I know like 4 second year folks who have full time offer and they have done like 3 international trips already. So yeah,
Yeah. I would like to be in that position, but again, fingers crossed, you never know.
the other minor thing I would add on this is like some schools like Wharton have this called grade non-disclosure. What essentially means is like the Wharton student body asks you not to write grades on your resume, and your
Mhm.
employers are not supposed to ask for it as part of recruitment process either. So if you are someone who doesn't want to particularly spend too much time on academics, that might you might want to pick a school that has this grade non-disclosure, because in that case you don't have to worry about grades being a hindrance to the recruitment process, because anyways they will not be shown to your employers.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, so we have about 10 more minutes. So I think we can take maybe one or two more questions before closing out. So this question, I think, is directed at everybody. Would love to know about the culture at each school. Would you share your experiences regarding the collaborativeness of your peers and seniors? Brina, I think you can start.
I can kick it off. Yeah. I think Kellogg, just like if you guys have ever been on campus or maybe talked to somebody at Kellogg, like the people are just truly, truly, truly supportive and thoughtful. We are a social bunch. So like everything about the Kellogg ecosystem has been like built to foster community. So unlike a lot of other schools, we have Wednesdays off instead of Fridays off, which I totally didn't understand why. And now I totally get it, because every Tuesday night through Wednesday, we're doing something fun together, whether it's like a boat on Lake Michigan, or like this past Tuesday night, we were in trolleys going into the city, like all together. Like Kellogg is just very, very big on like fostering community. And it's interesting to see how it lives itself from like a social perspective to like smaller groups. We have a very big small group dinner culture here, as well as even recruiting. Like our interview prep groups are like groups that you'll meet 2 or 3 times a week, and that is a great way where a second year or a senior will come and like take you in under their wings and like show you how to get the offers and everything. So we're a super collaborative bunch. Everything about like the section experience kind of like helps funnel that for the next generations.
Bhavya?
Yeah, I have a lot to say about Yale, especially its community. It's a smaller school. So I think personally for me, I thrive in more close-knit environments where you're able to foster more meaningful connections with other folks. The depth of connections is much more profound, in my opinion, my experience. So Yale was that kind of environment that allowed me to do that. We have the cohort system like all other schools. And within our cohorts, we are very close knit, but also across cohorts. Like my roommate and I are hosting a Christmas tree lighting ceremony on Friday. So we have a bunch of folks coming in, and we're just going to be sitting around the tree, like putting in ornaments, drinking hot chocolate. So we do have that sense of community. We're all looking out for each other. And that was really highlighted during this entire recruitment process, where I've noticed that more than competition, it's been very, very collaborative. Everyone's helping each other out, sharing job postings. This is a school that doesn't believe in a zero-sum game. It's, there's enough to go around for everyone. So that ethos of Yale SOM is something that's really resonated with my personal values, and really truly feel privileged to be here. And I think likewise for the second years, our consulting club is run entirely by second years. And the amount of time that they have put in the past semester, hours and hours of resume reviews, of casing us, of running the sessions for our consulting club. It's just been incredible the amount of time that they've dedicated to it.
Yeah, so
Vivian, go
Michigan
ahead.
is all about community, and we are a part of bigger University of Michigan cohort, and quote me when I say this, we are literally crazy about our culture. And University of Michigan is in Ann Arbor, which houses the biggest football stadium. It's the second largest stadium in the entire world, and we are literally crazy about our culture. There's a famous saying that goes that if you sign your mail stating "Go Blue," which is our mantra for everything, you are bound to get the reply. Uh, earlier in this panel, I said that if given a chance, I would like to do MBA for the rest of my life, and the reason for that is I belong to this community, which is there for each one of us, and just being part of it really fills me with a lot of pride. And I could not have found a better place for my MBA to do it. Not taking away from anyone, but yeah, I'm really the proudest Michigan.
I think specifically for Wotan, one of the key distinguished thing is it has like a batch of 850 people. It can be a lot initially because just remembering so many names can be hard. But at the same time, like Wotan puts in a lot of effort to try to create smaller cohorts just to make sure you feel you're still at home, like especially for internationals. There's a lot of separate programming that's being done just to make sure they feel they're adjusting to the cultural shifts. They actually have a network, they have a group of small friends. It helps you do a lot of small group dinners. It creates these smaller cohorts, groups of like 80 people, groups of 5 people, 6 people, just to sort of make sure you feel very well connected to the community, especially when it can be a very big change, especially for someone who might be moving to United States for the first time.
Great, great. So I think this is the last question we'll take before we take the concluding comments. So it says, do most students work while obtaining a full-time MBA, either internship or less demanding jobs? Or are most of these jobs for most full-time students? I think anybody can take this question.
I can start.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think firstly, the answer to this might vary again, international versus non-international. I'm going to speak more from an international angle, but others feel free to add. I think as an international, when you are on F1 visa, you are simply not allowed to take external work in the first 9 months. You're not allowed to take paid internship outside school. So you just can't do that essentially in the first year. In the second year, it's totally a personal choice. A lot of people end up doing in-semester interns. So Wharton has this semester in San Francisco that is sort of built specifically around this, just for folks who want to do in-semester interns in SF area. Completely personal choice, non-mandatory. It's a choice based on how much money you are earning, how much do you want to work in a particular industry. Some people use it as a way to earn some money. Some people use it as a way to see if they really like working in industry, to see if they might be want to go there full time. Some people use it as a way to build connection. So yeah, it's completely optional. practically a lot of people end up doing it. A lot of people also end up not doing it. It's not a mandatory by any chance. Like I was earlier mentioning, if you are a second year student who already has a full-time offer, doesn't need a bit of extra cash and just want to relax, completely okay to not do it. Whereas if you're a first year student who doesn't have you're a second year student who doesn't have an intern right now, and you're still looking to build connections to eventually find a job, that might be the best thing for you. So yeah, it's completely personal to person.
Great. So I think So final comments from everybody, starting with Reina. What's your most important advice for applicants?
I think my most important piece of advice is to really get into, if you decide that you want to come to business school, as you're applying, don't be afraid to share your story of your why and like really be true and authentic to yourself. And then I'd also say, to the extent that you can meet people from the schools that you're very interested in applying to, take the time to like just call them or text them 15 minutes, 20 minutes so that you can understand their culture, what they're going through at their school. Because I feel like it's those personal touches that like bring your application to light a little bit more and definitely help you get in. So that would be my two things.
Great. Babia?
Yeah, I think echo everything that Rana said, and in addition to that, I think really choose the school that resonates with your personal values. I think that is instrumental in helping you maximize the 2 years, the resources offered by the school in those 2 years. Because if you end up in a place where you may be selecting that school based off of other artificial constructs, but not necessarily personal drivers or professional motivations, you may end up being in a place where you're, coming out 2 years later and feeling like you could have chosen a different place. So just be authentic to yourself. Choose the school that really resonates. Usually, like for me, it was a very like instinctual sort of. I felt at home when I came here for a campus visit. I felt really connected to the folks I spoke with. So exactly what Rana said, please make sure that you speak to enough people that you get an authentic perspective, and then make an informed decision for yourself.
Great. Divya?
Yeah, I agree with both Bhavya and Raina. It's know your school really, really well, because what will matter in your interviews is why do you want to get into a particular school. It is very important to get the why part of that answer, which should resonate with your story. So it will resonate with your story if it resonates with it. So know your story well and find your fit and know your whys, and then you're good at it.
Great, Akshay.
Yeah, I think very similar to what's already been said. I would say don't index too much over rankings, and like everyone else says, look at fit. While rankings can offer a broader picture on which school overall does well, MBA is much more personalized experience to what you hope to gain out of it, personal or professional. I don't think anyone should make a decision based on this school is in fifth ranking versus seventh ranking. Personalizing your own experience, looking at career job opportunities, looking at extracurricular, just looking at overall vibe of the campus. Visit the campus if you can. If you're in nearby area, visiting the campus might be the best thing just for you to see if you can see yourself spending 2 years here. So yeah, I would really say focus on personal fit over rankings.
Great. So it's been a fantastic use of our time. We're exactly at 45 minutes. It's been a pleasure speaking with each and every one of you. I believe everyone has been able to glean a lot of insights, a lot of tips that can be applied to our essays and applications. That's for those applying in round 2, 3, or other subsequent rounds. So thank you very much for joining the session. Please feel free to join other sessions as you see fit, including the exhibition booths. And thank you very much, guys. It's been a pleasure. I hope you have a wonderful experience at your programs. And Divya, go Blues
Go
as you
blue.
said.
Yeah, go
All
blue.
right.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bhavya, Akshay, Raina.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Yeah.
you guys.
Bye.
Have
Bye.
a good one.